We're always told that planting a tree is one of the best things we can do for the planet. It just feels right. But what if, in some of the most fragile places on Earth, that simple act isn't the whole story? What if there's a better way to heal the land? A way that starts not with a sapling, but with the soil itself? To really get this, we first need to understand the sheer scale of the places we're talking about.
So, take a look at this number, 2.3 billion. Any ideas? Well, that's how many people live in the world's drylands. We're talking about nearly a third of the entire human population. And get this, that number has actually doubled since 1990. For all these people, their lives, their food, their future, it's all directly tied to the health of this very specific kind of land.
And here's the challenge. These ecosystems are huge, covering almost half of our planet's land, but they are incredibly vulnerable. Because of chronic water shortages and a changing climate, they are constantly at risk of what's called land degradation, which is basically when fertile ground loses its lifeblood and slowly turns into desert. So figuring out how to restore them isn't just some academic exercise. It's a matter of survival for billions.
For decades, when faced with desertification, the most obvious answer has been afforestation. These huge, ambitious projects to plant millions of trees and create new forests where there weren't any before. It seems like the perfect solution, right? A green wall to hold back the spreading sand?
To see how this actually works in the real world, we're going to zoom in on Turkey. Over 60% of the country is at risk of desertification, so for more than 50 years, they've been a world leader in these massive tree planting campaigns. It gives us a perfect, long-term case study to see what really happens.
And when I say long-term, I really mean it. This wasn't some quick project. Researchers looked at a whole series of sites that were planted over decades, starting way back in the late 60s and going all the way up to the early 2000s. This sustained effort gives us this incredible window to measure the real, long-term impact on the soil. And the main character in this whole story is the black pine. It's a tough, resilient tree that's super common across the Mediterranean, and it became the go-to choice for these projects. Just between 2009 and 2016, something like 1 billion black pine saplings were planted in Turkey. 1 billion!
Okay, so you plant billions of trees over 50 years. The result should be obvious, right? Richer, healthier, restored soil? Well, this is where the story takes a fascinating and, honestly, a really unexpected turn. When scientists actually dug in to find out what was going on, the soil had a very different story to tell.
This is the core assumption. You would absolutely think that a 50-year-old forest would have way more fertile soil than a 10-year-old one. It just makes sense. The trees have had more time to drop needles, build up all that organic matter, and just enrich the ground. But is that actually what happened?
So this was the first big surprise. Researchers looked at something called soil organic carbon. It's a super important sign of healthy soil. And they found, basically no real difference related to the age of the forest. A 50-year-old pine forest wasn't storing more carbon in its soil than a much younger one. That steady, expected increase just wasn't there.
Okay, so that was kind of weird, but it was nothing compared to what they found next. Carbon is one thing, but nitrogen is absolutely fundamental for soil fertility and plant growth. And what the scientists discovered here, it completely flipped the script.
Just look at this data. It's stunning. The 50-year-old forest, the most mature one, had about 15 megagrams of nitrogen per hectare in its soil. But the 10-year-old forest, it had 62. That is more than 4 times the amount of this critical nutrient. The youngest forest had vastly richer soil than the oldest. How on earth is that even possible?
This result seems to defy all logic. So to figure out what was going on, the researchers had to look not just at what was planted, but at how the land was prepared in the first place. And it all came down to this one crucial step, tilling the soil before planting. This is where we uncover the secret.
The way they designed the study was just so clever. For every forest plot they looked at, they also had a control plot right next to it. These control plots went through the exact same prep work. The soil was all broken up and cleared. But then, they never planted any pine trees. They just left them alone. And comparing the two turned out to be the key to the whole mystery.
And the results from this comparison are wild. Let's look at the sites after 20 years. The plot with no trees, the one that was just tilled and left to nature, had 140% more organic carbon in its soil, okay? And the nitrogen, it was a staggering 1,000% higher than in the plot with all the black pines. So get this. Doing nothing after tilling was actually better for the soil, at least in the short term, than planting the trees was. So what was happening? Well, tilling that hard, compacted land broke it up
and that allowed air and water to get in. That simple mechanical act, without adding a single tree, basically hit a reset button. It created the perfect conditions for nature to begin its own restoration process, and it did it with incredible speed and efficiency.
And the real heroes of this story are what we call pioneer species. On those tilled-only plots, all these fast-growing grasses and shrubs immediately moved in. They're like nature's first responders. Many of them are amazing at pulling nitrogen from the air and locking it into the soil. They did all the heavy lifting of enriching the ground, basically preparing it for bigger trees to come later.
So what does this all mean? Should we just stop planting trees?
No, not at all. But it does mean we need to think a lot smarter about how we restore these fragile landscapes. And that brings us to the key lesson here.
The big takeaway isn't the black pines are bad. They're incredibly important. The issue is creating a monoculture, just a forest of one single species. By planting only the pines, we might actually be skipping a critical step in nature's own playbook. We're sort of pushing aside all those helpful little plants that do so much important work in the beginning.
So the research suggests a much smarter recipe for restoration. First, mix it up. Plant a variety of species, pines, yeah, but also broadleaf trees and other plants to create a healthier ecosystem. Second, let nature help. Prepare the soil, sure, but then allow those pioneer species to come in and work their magic. It's a concept called assisted natural succession. Basically, we give nature a nudge and then work with its powerful healing process instead of trying to replace it.
And that's really the final powerful message from the researchers themselves. It's a call to shift our thinking away from just massive, simple planting projects to a more intelligent way of restoring the land, one that works with nature, not against it. It forces us to ask a really important question. Is our goal just to plant a forest, or is it to truly heal the land from the ground up?